was very anxious. I was very stressed out. I was working 80-hour weeks. I was in software, and as a software developer, as a business analyst, project manager, I did all sorts of things in software. And it was very stressful. My wife and I had just had our second child, and it was stressful, right, to say the least. I went to my doctor and I asked her for some help. I need something, and so she gave me a benzodiazepine. I don't remember what I did the rest of the day, and it really put me into obviously a different dimension, when I came to that night, and I realized that is not an option for me. It's not going to be something that I can use long term. I was concerned about its addictive potential. You might not love kava. It might not be the thing that you like. It might not be like the answer to all of your questions, right? And the answer to all of your problems. It's certainly not a solution. I can tell you myself that when I first got into kava, I did not need a long-term solution. I did not need something that was going to harm me. I did not need something that was going to get me hooked on something. So I look at kava actually as a short-term solution. I was stressed for a couple of months. So I look at kava as a tool that I can use in an array of things, right? Australia released a ranking for substance that harm humans, right? It was a harm index. They ranked alcohol at 98 out of 100 of being bad, right? And if you think of all of the things that it could be bad for, it's bad from a health perspective. It could jack up your liver. It could give you cancer. It hurts society because of addiction. It hurts families. It breaks families apart. It has all sorts of humongous problems that affect our entire society and cost our society's tons of money too, right? I think of all the times that people have had hangovers and they can't come into work. Well, guess what? That harms everyone, especially when you look at it from a macro scale perspective. In that same study, they ranked kava as 2 out of 100.
Is something standing between you and your happiness? It was for me. I had to face my depression and the constant negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize I deserve to be happy. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health, because I made the choice to heal, and I want to share that with you. As a gift to you, we've partnered with BetterHelp as our sponsor to help you start your own healing journey. We all face moments when life feels overwhelming, whether it's stress, anxiety, or just feeling stuck. Talking to someone can make a real difference, and that's where our sponsor BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp offers professional online therapy that's convenient, affordable, and entirely on your schedule. You can connect with a licensed therapist by video, phone, or even chat, whatever works best for you. Let our sponsor BetterHelp support you on your journey to better mental health. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth. That's betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month. Take the first step toward feeling better today.
As a teenager, I decided to live better, so I gave up the meat, eggs, and cheddar. At 20 and 30, I wanted more, so I strengthened my mind and my core. Living a life that is healthier and wealthier because I choose health.
So on this podcast, we've been highlighting the different stories of people, stories of resilience, stories of overcoming different health ailments. And every once in a while, we'll definitely highlight certain products. And if you guys remember, a couple of weeks ago, we had Ray Saltis on, who has been so nice to allow us to use his dispensary as the recording space. We had him talk about different products for his Brooklyn Organic Buds dispensary. And so I'm really excited about today's interview because we have with us Morgan Smith and his company Kalm With Kava. And those products, as he will tell you, the specific health benefits that are meant to provide for buyers, for consumers, is pretty exciting, especially at a time where everyone seems to be dealing with some type of anxiety or depression or inability to focus. So anything that can help with that, I think is pretty cool. So I would like to welcome to the show Morgan Smith. Morgan Smith, welcome to the I Choose Health podcast.
I'm so stoked to be here, man. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to talk about kava. Obviously, I'm a kava guy. I'm a kava nerd. I've been consuming kava for about 10 or 12 years. I fell in love with the culture of kava, it being a South Pacific invention of people from 3,000 years ago, continuing on and continue to be a very important part of their culture. It has really kind of hooked me, right? It's one of those things that I just really love the history of. I love hanging out with people today that love kava, and I love introducing people to it because it's a very different experience and something that I think can benefit a lot of people because it has benefited me personally, right? So very grateful that you'd have me on.
So, two things. Actually, I want to explore that concept of kava a little bit more, and then also explain to listeners what your personal experience has been with it.
Yeah. So kava has been farmed for 3,000 years throughout Melanesia, Polynesia, and Micronesia. Now, in Melanesia, it started in the islands of Vanuatu. So, Vanuatu is west of Fiji. So, you're thinking very tropical islands, very kind of National Geographic, waterfalls, jungles, very rocky, mountainous islands that are just beautiful, filled with people that are just as beautiful. They've been consuming kava for these 3,000 years as a way to connect with one another. It's a way to, if you have an issue with your neighbor next door, you go drink kava with them. You have an issue with the chief, you have a political deal you want to do, a business deal, you want to go marry the girl next door, you're drinking kava together. And throughout this time, as it has been alive, it's sterile. So it means that it has flowers, but it doesn't have seeds, which means that it's required humans to actually plant it and propagate it and reproduce it for itself because it doesn't do that on its own. And what that means is that without humans putting it in their canoes and voyaging across the ocean, and putting it into new environments with different soils, different weather patterns, different cultures consuming it, you would not have the 100 different types of drinkable kava, which we call noble kava today. They all offer different experiences. They all are kind of sedative. They're all kind of euphoric, and they're like a spectrum, right? Of like when it first started out, it was very sedative, and as it traveled eastwards over towards Hawaii, it got more and more euphoric as time went on, as it became something real, something that people would want to consume, because it originally started as a wild plant, but as it became domesticated, it became more and more sort of what the people wanted as it traveled east. So that's a little bit of a background about the actual plant itself. I liken it to like a Polynesian peace pipe. That's really like the kind of the best way to put it. It's like a very intense chamomile in effect. When people talked about CBD like 10 or 15 years ago, they gave it all sorts of like, oh, well, this is what it's going to do. It's going to make you feel this way. And I have so many friends that tried CBD, including myself, and they were like, I didn't really feel a whole lot, didn't really do a whole lot for me. And I think it's because they're missing that psychoactive effect that they're expecting from like a THC. And I feel like kava is what people thought CBD would be.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Got it. And that's been your like specific personal experience with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I found kava because one day about 12 years ago, I was very anxious. I was very stressed out. I was working 80-hour weeks. I was in software, and as a software developer, as a business analyst, project manager, I did all sorts of things in software, and it was very stressful. My wife and I had just had our second child, and, it was stressful, right, to say the least. So I went to my doctor and I asked her for some help. I said, I need something. And so she gave me a benzodiazepine. That benzodiazepine, when I took it a couple days later, I don't remember what I did the rest of the day. And it really put me into obviously a different dimension, and I was driving coworkers to lunch and I was making all sorts of decisions, and I came to that night and I realized that, that is not an option for me. It's not going to be something that I can use long term. I was concerned about its addictive potential. And of course, I was concerned about, having my brain, right? Like I want to make sure that I can make good, sound decisions. So I tried about 15 different things to deal with it, right? I tried CBD. I tried Kana. I tried Kratom. I tried different types of mushrooms, mucuna pruriens, ashwagandha, L-theanine. I tried like so many different things. And not to say that none of them are beneficial, right? I think that a lot of them are beneficial. But for me personally, kava was the only thing I tried that really helped me like kind of ground myself and center myself. And something that like I could take without being concerned about its addictive potential. So many things out there are problematic long term, and kava is just one of those things that is luckily not. So it has a psychoactive effect. You can definitely feel that it's working. It definitely helps me kind of wind down and chill out at the end of the day, but it's not something that I'm going to have tomorrow. And that's a selling point to me.
Is the impact of it immediate? Because I know for a lot of people, they want certain substances or, things that they're taking to have like an immediate effect. Like how quickly would people feel that effect from kava?
Yeah, so some people say that there's a reverse tolerance, which I actually don't agree with. I think that that's a myth. I think that the vast majority of the time, people either don't prepare it correctly if they're having traditional kava, or they are not ingesting enough, or they're not drinking it on an empty stomach. So those are the three main rules, is that you have to normally traditional kava, you put it into a strainer bag and then you kind of massage the bag in a bowl of water, and that will extract all the kava lactones, which are the major compounds that are encased in the starches of the plant. And those starches are what you want to drink. So it's like kava is a suspension. It's not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like coffee or tea. You know how it kind of gets infused into the water? Kava doesn't do that. Kava has these, little kind of very fine particles that you're massaging out of the bag into the water. So every time you take another serving of kava, you mix up the bowl because it all settles down to the bottom. Oh, a solution. That's the word I was looking for.
Right.
Like coffee and tea they're a solution, right? If we're chemistry nerds, I'm not, but that's what they tell me. And so as a suspension, kava is something where you can kind of mix up the bowl and then drink that. And those kava lactones are what are responsible for the psychoactive and sedative effects. There's 6 major ones. One is called kavain. That's also responsible for the numbing of your mouth. When it goes into your mouth, it kind of numbs your tongue and your throat, and that helps with kind of the more euphoric aspects. And then the other one that people talk about a lot is called dihydromethacism, which is responsible for its sedative or muscle relaxant effects.
So I know that Kalm with Kava, it started with Mike Munsel's deep respect for Kava's cultural roots. How do you personally honor that legacy while helping the brand evolve?
So Mike was one of my best friends. He was a guy who I would talk to all the time about kava. He was my guru, right? He was the guy that I would talk to and say, hey, like, what about this? Like, what does the plant do when this happens? What if it's grown in this kind of an area? Or how much are you supposed to drink? Or how, all of those questions I would always ask Mike. Mike was like the guy. For years and years and years, we were great friends. And unfortunately, in 2020, he passed away. And his wife called me one day and she said, look, she has a lot of health issues. And she said, look, I got to shut this thing down. I said, no, you're not. I like Mike already died. It ruined me. It wrecked me. And I felt like if his company died, he would truly die. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I knew that he also had plants in Hawaii on the Big Island. That he'd grown kava plants, right? And he had about 100 plants. And so I bought the company from his wife, Tiffany, and I also bought the land where he had his 100 plants. And now we have 15,000 plants from his 100, and his company is still around today, right? So, I've got a picture of him on my desk here at our office. There's a big giant picture of him, behind my desk, right? Like he's kind of in everything that we do. And, he's not around, right? But he is in those plans. He's every time I go to Hawaii and I'm walking around those plants, I have a conversation with Mike and I tell him that he better damn well get these plants to grow. That's his job now. He might not be here to run the company, but he is here to keep those plants going, so he's kind of the inspiration for everything about this company.
With the sacredness of kava, like how do you balance modern product innovation with respect for traditional kava preparation and use?
Yeah, I mean, look, like the elephant in the room is I'm a white guy, right? My family came from islands, but they're called the British Islands. I'm not Polynesian, man. I got no melanin in me, bro. Like I go out in the sun and 20 minutes later, I'm beet red. You know what I'm saying? So I don't, unfortunately, I should not say unfortunately. I should say I am not from those islands. And so I want to be very clear that I am not from the cultures that we're talking about here. I don't represent them, but I do have a lot of experience there, right? I mean, I travel to the South Pacific Islands often. I go to Vanuatu. I go to Fiji. In 2 months, I'm going to be going to Fiji and Tonga. I have a farm in Hawaii, right? So we have, across our company, and Mike started all of this. We go to the islands. We meet these people that have been farming this for thousands of years, and we're friends. And at this point, we're kind of family. The other day, I was having dinner with my family, and some folks from Fiji called me up on a video call, and hey, these are my kids. Like, I've been there. I've met their kids, right? Like we're homies. And so when you talk about creating products that help respect the culture, all of the people that I work with, I bring them our products, right? Like, I want them to know what I'm doing with their kava, and they're very interested in it. Most of the time they go like, oh, well, like a tincture, right? They're like, that's kava. Like, that seems a little odd. And I'm kind of with them. I actually prefer the traditional product. I think that it's stronger, and it's not like a normal, like, extracts of, like, if you think of like cannabis extracts, you think, oh, well, this is really strong, right? I can take a tiny little amount and I'm going to go to space. Kava's not like that for some reason, and we don't know why. I think that there's some volatiles that are destroyed when you do an extraction, and we don't quite understand exactly what's going on there. But a kava extract is not as strong as traditional kava is. So, the full experience is the drink of kava. But so I bring them my products. They know what we're doing. And so we work with them to create products that will be great, and I think that, 80-90% of my sales are from traditional kava. So to me, that's kind of how I make sure that the culture and traditions are respected. We drink and advocate for traditional kava, but we also have other products to kind of get newcomers in. That was quite a word to use there. Yeah. I was going to say newbies and then newcomers, and combining them is a.
But I know your company works closely with, nutritionists and food scientists and chemists. Why was that multidisciplinary approach important?
Yeah. So, I mean, for quite a while, we had microbiologists on staff. We work with companies that really are super intelligent when it comes to food science. They know what they're doing, and they know what is going to work and what's not going to work. If you don't have people that know what they're doing around this stuff, you can get into some really dangerous territory. You see it all the time in the supplement space. And look, I sell supplements. Right? Kava can be considered a supplement, but it can also be considered a food. Most people sell kava as a supplement. And the supplement space, you always see, not approved by the FDA. And, they'll say registered or manufactured in an FDA registered facility, but they cannot say that they're FDA approved, right? And neither can I, right? That's just not how the FDA operates. That's not how they regulate supplements. What that also means is that there can be a lot of products out there on the market that the FDA has very little purview of. They can find after the fact, right? After it's already on the market, they can see issues and they can take action. But they cannot stop someone from bringing a supplement to market. And I think that there's a real danger there. So if you're not working with people who are like really on the up and up and who are legitimate, you might have issues with product quality, and you might have issues with people doing things that are bad. And so I think that that's like a very important thing to recognize, is that, people are going to do things with supplements that you might not like. And as a consumer, you don't have any visibility into.
I know that the Food and Drug Administration serves a purpose of regulating, different substances and stuff like that. But how much pushback have you had from agencies like the FDA or, specific individuals or companies that may have a problem with your particular model?
So you're in New York, right? New York recently, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, they just had kind of a landmark case. It's a big problem in my mind. Basically, there was a kava bar. There's been multiple kava bars in New York City, and they were challenged by the New York City Health Department because they believe kava to not be safe. And there's a list of products out there. So in 1958, the Food and Drug Act was created by Congress to create the FDA, and it allowed them to determine what is a food and what is not. Right? They said there's a bunch of different classifications for things. You have foods, you have supplements, you have drugs. And there's also something called a food additive. A food additive is something that you add to foods. So think of maybe calcium when you're adding that to milk, or vitamin C if you're adding it to like orange juice, or maybe iodide to salt. Those are food additives, right? They're not dangerous, and they're added to what's called the generally recognized as safe food list. And so if you combine those with other foods, the FDA says, no problem, go for it, completely legal. But with kava, it is considered a food by the FDA and also by the World Health Organization. But if you add it to anything else, it becomes a food additive. Unfortunately, it's not on that generally recognized as safe food list. And the reason is because in 1958, if you're some congressman sitting there creating legislation, you've never heard of kava. So they allowed for something that was, to be added to the GRAS list. If you either have something that's been in the food supply for a long time, pre-1958, it was automatically grandfathered into the GRAS list. Well, kava should have been on that list, but it wasn't known, right? And so it only came to the US really in popularity in the 80s and 90s. And at that point, it was considered a new dietary ingredient. Well, it's been used for 3,000 years. It's not a new dietary ingredient, but the FDA refuses to acknowledge that. So unfortunately, it's not on that GRAS list. And that case in New York City was entirely questioning whether or not kava should be added to anything else. And also, very unfortunately, the judge, she has not seen anything from the FDA that really shows what kava truly is. And so she said, well, kava is not on this list and it's being added to water, and water is a food. And so kava became a food additive, and now all of a sudden, all kava bars are serving illegal products. The reality of it is, though, is that the FDA considers water added to kava as a single ingredient food, not a food additive. The FDA has never made that really super public, and so the judge had no idea otherwise. So from a regulatory perspective, that's happening actually all across the U.S. It's happening in California right now. I've seen it in Arizona here where I live. I've seen it in Nevada. I was up in Las Vegas at a festival there, and the health department came down and shut down a little kava stall, and they couldn't serve kava anymore. It's becoming an issue that I think needs some attention because kava is safe. It's been used for 3,000 years. The state of Hawaii considers it generally recognized as safe, and so does the state of Michigan. So people need to catch up to that and realize that that is the case, and kava is not some crazy thing that, is dangerous.
So, I know some people are going to have their specific, suspicions about it. And I know that micronized instant kava and kava concentrates are standout products. What problem specifically were you trying to solve when developing them?
Yeah, so traditional kava to a lot of people is a little bit hard to do, right? And it shouldn't be. It's very easy. You put some kava in a bag and you massage it in a bowl for 10 minutes in some water. That's all you do. It's very simple. But I think Americans are very interested in something very quick and instant. Personally, I feel like that's kind of missing the point of kava. I feel like it also misses some sort of like meditative aspect of preparing kava. I like that 10 minutes at night when it's, the house is quiet and the kids are in bed and I can relax and kind of decompress and think about what's going on, what happened that day and how I need to deal with things. But there are people who just don't want to do that, right? And so instant kava came out. It's basically kava that has been prepared and then dehydrated. So think of like dehydrated or instant coffee. Same kind of a thing with kava. Micronized kava, how we do it is we'll take traditional kava, grind it, and then sift out all of the big woody particulates that you would have sifted out from like straining. And so it's very similar to instant kava. You just mix it right into your drinks or whatever you got. And then like the juice concentrates, that uses a kava extract that is a water soluble extract that we put into juices, and it helps you kind of just experience a little bit of kava without having to deal with some of the taste. The taste is, I think, the number one drawback for a lot of people. It is I call it medicinal muddy water. So I'm not trying to convince anyone that it tastes good, but you don't drink it for the flavor, right? You drink it for the effects.
But I imagine that with your products, there's been some complexity added to the taste, right? So, like what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple things that you can do, right? Salt is a big thing. Adding a little bit of salt, adding a little bit of sweetness, adding acid is always a good thing. A lot of people like flavors that are, if you're going to make traditional kava or instant kava, some of the best flavors that pair with it are actually more earthy or spicy. So kava's Latin name is Piper methysticum. Piper means pepper. It's a member of the pepper family. So it has very bitter, piney, peppery notes. And by the way, kava means bitter in Tongan. And so with that being said, cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, those are really good, strong, earthy flavors that are kind of numbing in a lot of ways. If you think of like strong cinnamon, it's kind of spicy, it kind of burns a little bit. Cinnamon's a great kind of masker of flavors. So a lot of people will mix in some sort of a cream. I think that the fat in a cream or a milk will coat your tongue so you don't taste the bitter flavors as much. And then once you add cinnamon or nutmeg or clove, it really creates a nice sort of earthy atmosphere. You kind of feels like Thanksgiving and Szechuan Chinese peppercorns all at once.
So, just kind of reflecting on your, relationship with Mike, you've been helping build new relationships with kava farmers. Why is direct sourcing so important in this industry?
Kava takes 3 to 5 years to grow. So you really have to nurture those plants. You have to take care of them for 3 to 5 years and then you harvest them. It's not like a tree where you plant it and 5 years later you get fruit for 40, 50 years. You plant it and for 5 years you don't get anything. And then you get one shot to take this plant, right? Which means that there's also a lot of risk. Let's say your tree gets sick one year, or maybe you forget to fertilize it. Well, the next year, you could take care of it. You could add fertilizer to it. You could water it more. You could take care of pests. And the next year, you're going to get fruit. Kava is one shot. You have some pests that are causing issues. You have nematodes that are growing in the ground that will destroy the roots. These are very jungly, humid, moist environments. So you have rotting issues. If you don't take care of your plants, you're going to have problems. So in the same way, if you don't take care of the relationships that you have with the farmers that are doing this, you're also going to have problems. The demand for kava is incredibly high. People need to, like, in the capitalistic world that we live in today, you have to have supply in order to sell it, right? And so without those relationships being really good and solid, you will not get kava, or you will not get kava that's quality. So one of the biggest things that we do that's a little bit different than most is that we take the kava roots, and the roots are what you consume of the kava plant. You have these stems up top and the leaves, that's what you use for propagation to create new plants. But then the root ball, or the stump as we call it, and the lateral roots that shoot out from the side, that's what you're actually consuming. You don't want to consume the stems. You don't want to consume the leaves. And it's because they don't have as much of the active kavalactones that we're talking about here. So you won't feel the effects as much, and it just won't be as nice of an experience. So what we do is we import whole roots and stumps, because that way we know, like, just from eyesight, we can tell what parts of the plant that we're getting. And we also know the age of the plant. So if you just buy kava from some random supplier, you don't know what you're getting, especially if it's already pounded. Right? Because if it's already put into a powder, you got no clue what it could be. And I've heard all sorts of horror stories about it being mixed with flour or cassava powder or taro powder or all sorts of other things. And so contaminants are a big problem. Processing issues are a big problem. And so I work with these farmers because what it allows me to do is I can go visit them. I can learn about their issues. I can learn about, you need clean water? Okay, well, let's help you get filtration. Oh, you need a plan, like a food safety plan? No problem. I've got a fantastic employee that builds food safety plans for our suppliers. So that means that they know how to harvest and process. And when the FDA comes to visit them, inevitably at some point, we can support them and not have their business shut down. So that relationship is super, super important to make sure that not only my business continues, but their business continues.
This is super helpful because prior to, getting in communication with you, I had never heard of kava. I think there might be a kombucha brand called kava. I'm not sure. And so that was the most I've heard of the term kava. But this is really like new and interesting to me. And so I wanted to do more research into it. So this is pretty cool just learning this from you. Like, this is definitely helpful. definitely helpful to our audience. And so, it's definitely in the same strain as, some of the stuff we were talking about with CBD, even though it is slightly different. CBD is people are a little bit more familiar with it now. So I think it is helpful for us to learn the different alternatives that we have out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's my message to everyone, right? You might not love kava. It might not be the thing that you like. It might not be like the answer to all of your questions, right? And the answer to all of your problems. It's certainly not a solution. I can tell you myself that when I first got into kava, I did not need a long-term solution. I did not need something that was going to harm me. I did not need something that was going to get me hooked on something. So I look at kava actually as a short-term solution. I was stressed for a couple of months. I did not need a year of pharmaceuticals, right? What I needed was something to help me get through the day. So I look at kava as a tool that I can use in an array of things, right? I can go for a walk. I can go do some yoga. I can go hang out with a friend. I can, drink some tea. I could go, just meditate. And I could also drink some kava. It's one thing of many that can help me through the day. And I just want people to be aware that there are alternatives out there to all of the things that everyone consumes these days. Look, my wife is a nurse. My brother's a doctor. I believe in Western medicine. I think that you should go to your doctor if you need to, right? But I also think that there are alternatives to Western medicine. And I also think there's alternatives to things out there like alcohol, right? That people are turning to all the time. I think there's alternatives to cannabis. If cannabis doesn't suit you, personally, I'm not a cannabis guy. It knocks me out. It just makes me want to sleep. It doesn't, it's just not for me. And that's fine. Kava is not going to be right for everyone either. But I want people to know that it exists, that it's safe, and that there's a potential that you can use it yourself to help you in your life, help you wind down and relax without any huge long-term problems.
So one of the questions that's coming to mind for me right now, because I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Paul George in the NBA. I think he's being suspended for, I think they found some substances in his blood that were seen as like performance enhancing drugs.
Mhm.
When it comes to kava, I know it's mostly used for helping with concentration and focus and distressing. Has there ever been a situation where, I don't know, maybe someone is tested and they're using kava and maybe it comes up or shows up in the blood in a certain way? Is that something that an athlete or maybe a person who just gets drug tested regularly for work should be concerned about with taking kava?
Fantastic question. So first off, we've already established that it is a supplement or a food, right? And so it is completely legal. You can import it. You can sell it anywhere. Not a problem, right? And so it is not an illegal substance by any means. The FDA knows I'm here. I import things. The FDA knows I bring things in all the time. The FDA came to my facility last year, right? Like we're above board, and so is everyone that sells kava. That's the first thing. Second thing is that when you consume kava, there is an interesting thing that happens to some people called bruxism. Bruxism is something that it's where you kind of clench your jaw. Now, it doesn't happen to all people. It doesn't happen every time I drink kava. It's just random, right? But the interesting thing that it is the same kind of thing that happens when you consume MDMA and or ecstasy, right? And interestingly enough, it also pops for MDMA sometimes on cheap tests. So if you are drug tested and it does happen, all you have to do is say, give me an actual legit blood test and you'll see that there is no MDMA in my system. But it is a very like rare occurrence for that to happen. But I have heard of that.
Interesting. Now, have you noticed changes in how farmers view the growing global demand for kava?
Yes. So over the years, there has been multiple times where a weather issue happens, like hurricanes. 2 years ago, Vanuatu was hit by 2 different hurricanes within a week. They're hit by earthquakes constantly. Tonga in 2016 had a huge giant eruption, a volcanic eruption that changed the climate around the world for quite a while. And it rained down ashes on fields all over the place. All that acid from that killed a ton of different plants. And so there was areas where you couldn't find kava from Tonga for quite a while. But there's times where you can't really find kava from certain parts of Vanuatu for a while. And so you see shortages relatively frequently in these areas of the world that get hit by these natural disasters. And so, yes, you do see a lot of adapting from farmers down there. One issue that we see routinely, COVID hit, right? COVID obviously is not a routine thing, but what we saw is that farmers were less likely to plant kava. And, because it takes 3 to 5 years to mature, what we're seeing now in 2026 and started in 2025 was a shortage of kava. So because people were not planting as much then, we're paying the price for it now. And so that education of, hey, guys, I know that today it might not seem this way, it might not seem like it's in huge demand, but in 5 years, it's going to make a big difference if you plant today. That is the conversation that we're having right now, right? Is, hey, look, there's almost no demand. The prices have skyrocketed. My costs have gone up 20, 30%. That's not including tariffs, right? So you have, real huge supply issues right now. Tonga recently had a big drought. Very difficult to get Tongan kava right now. And so the same conversations are being had there. Additional conversations like, well, how are you going to stop it in the future? Well, how do we get irrigation there? How do we drill wells there? How do we do this and that? I mean, there's all sorts of conversations like that happen. It's one of those things that's just a constant struggle to figure out. We've experienced this. How are we going to make sure this doesn't happen again? And those are the conversations that we're having.
So, as the popularity of kava continues to grow, where do you see kava fitting into the future of alternative health and mental wellness?
I think that people are getting wise to the issues of substance abuse, right? They're seeing the issues with benzodiazepines. They're seeing the issues with alcohol. They're seeing some issues with cannabis. They're seeing some issues with mushrooms even, right? Or like a lot of people are looking to ketamine. Well, there's a lot of issues with that too. And so I think that, kava is relatively benign. You compare it to any of those substances and it is like super not concerning. Australia released a ranking for substance that harm humans, right? It was a harm index. They ranked alcohol at 98 out of 100 of being bad, right? And if you think of all of the things that it could be bad for, it's bad from a health perspective. It could jack up your liver. It could give you cancer. It hurts society because of addiction. It hurts families. It breaks families apart. It has all sorts of humongous problems that affect our entire society and cost our societies tons of money too, right? Think of all the times that people have had hangovers and they can't come into work. Well, guess what? That harms everyone, especially when you look at it from a macro scale perspective. In that same study, they ranked kava as two out of 100. So I think in the future, when people are looking for options, they're looking for, especially as you get older. Look, man, I don't know how old you are. I'm 38. I'm not super old, but I'm old enough to realize that I have to get up in the morning at some point and I got to get up with my kids and take them to school. And I don't want to mess up my evening. I want to remember what I did last night. I want to be able to wake up and feel refreshed. I don't want to, I don't want to have cirrhosis of the liver when I'm, 60 years old. So I think that that's where it plays a huge role. Like I said, kava's an option. It's just an option.
Yeah.
In an array of things that you can do to help your future self not deal with all of those issues.
Yeah. For those of you wondering, I'm 35 now, but someone recently guessed me at 40, so I'm feel a little self-conscious about it. So I'm like, all right, I gotta get on top of my rest and stress management.
Look, our bald heads do not help. You know what I mean? Like that's the problem, bro. It is an issue. I started like shaving my head and I immediately had to grow the beard because I just looked like a cancer patient. You know what I mean? It doesn't help. People still call me old. So I don't know what to do, man. I'm with you, bro.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I grow the hair back, see how much younger I look. I don't know, but
Oh, wait, you have the option to grow back?
I hope so.
I hope so too. Or else we'll both be on a plane to Turkey pretty soon here.
Oh man, we'll see. No, we have no connection to Mary Adams, so that's not why we're going to Turkey. All right. So, I mean, I love that the fact that you cleared up, the safety and efficacy of this of kava. Are there any misconceptions about kava that you're especially passionate about clearing up?
Oh yeah. One of the biggest things when people search for kava is that it's going to cause liver damage.
Mm.
In 2000 or around 2000, 2001, there was one German pharmaceutical company that bought kava from one farm on one island in Vanuatu. They brought it over to Europe. They extracted it using ethanol, and then they sold the product without testing it for harmful contaminants. It killed 3 people and it injured about 90. And that's a problem, right? But what that tells me from, again, a macro perspective, that is an issue for that one company with that one product. Unfortunately, the world reacted quite quickly and negatively. And they all said, Kava causes liver damage. It will kill you. We need to get it off the shelves. And the FDA put out an announcement in 2001 that said that. That announcement can no longer be found on their website. It's not there. The World Health Organization came out with a study in 2000, and they said that it was likely other things that caused those problems. If you think about people who are looking to kava for an alternative for all sorts of different things, you think of a German, you know what they're doing is they're drinking alcohol. So if you've been consuming alcohol for your entire life, and then you consume kava, and you have issues already, it might cause other issues, right? Who knows? Who knows? But what the World Health Organization did say is that kava is not solely responsible for liver damage. It's constantly being harangued as this issue, but it's really not. If you look at the FDA FAERS database, it's basically the FDA's Food Adverse Event Reaction System. It's a place where consumers can go in and they can log complaints about all of the issues that they are feeling from different substances. There's also another database that the FDA has. It's public, that it comes from manufacturers about people who had issues with substances. In the last 25 years, we have never seen an issue like that in Germany. We've never seen that. Kava is very benign. There are more issues that you see from brands like Sprite, the soda. You can look it up. Sprite has far more issues than Kava does. Kava has millions and millions of servings served every single day here in America. And the National Institute of Health, they said that it's a less than 1 in a million chances that you have any liver issues from kava. So it just tells you that, look, it's not a huge issue. Let's say it is 1 in a million. Let's say it's not less than 1 in a million. There's 350 million people in America. So that means that every single day, if every single person in America consumed kava today, 350 people would have liver damage. 350 people out of 350 million. That is obnoxiously low. And yet the National Institute of Health said it's less than that. And the reason they say it's less is because if you look at the actual data, you can't find anyone dying from liver issues from kava. So, Google will repeat things ad nauseum. They'll scare you about all sorts of things. You'll see doctors that say, yeah, kava's going to do this and that and whatever. They're regurgitating what they're reading on WebMD. So now, obviously, I'm biased. Look, I sell kava, but just look at the data.
And, one thing I wonder as well, how does kava fit into your own wellness routine? And then is there a specific product in your catalog that you love the most?
Now you're trying to get me in trouble, man. So no, my routine is, now I drink kava most nights. I'd probably maybe say 4 or 5 nights a week. But what I like to do is at night, it's about 10 o'clock at night. The kids are in bed. The wife is doing her own thing. And I've finally got a couple minutes to myself and I can take my bowl of water. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy.
Cool.
But I can take my kava, put it in my bowl, and I can massage it for a few minutes, and I can create a nice kava beverage, and it will help me kind of get into a good spot where I'm able to really think about the day. In a lot of ways, it's like a meditation. I can take that 10 minutes, and then I will make my drink and enjoy it. And again, late at night, it helps you unwind. It helps you relax. It helps you just chill out, and that's what I like to do.
And I want to give you this opportunity to definitely let people know, one, where they can source or buy, your kava product, and where we can connect with you, not just via the website, but also on social media as well.
Yeah, so on all of the social platforms, Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, you can look at our profiles at Kalm With Kava. It's Kalm with a K. Also, our website is kalmwithkava.com, Kalm with a K. We are all the time putting out these videos about the culture, about the people that grow it, about how it's grown, about the effects of kava. It's very, I try to be as educational as humanly possible. I want to be as transparent about what we do as humanly possible. And I just want people to know that it's a quality product. That's what we do. So you can reach out to us there. And very likely it'll be me responding personally. I like to have I like to keep tabs on what's going on over there. And that's what we do.
Well, Morgan, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. And audience, thank you for joining in. I hope you guys learned a lot. I learned a lot today as well, just about this new, well, it's not a new um, substance or new product, but it's definitely something that shows me I need to do more research into a lot of the holistic alternatives out there. And so I'm definitely interested in doing that. And I think this might actually help me with the podcast too, because I definitely, like Morgan, married with a child, and juggling several things from different jobs to juggling the podcast. Anything that could probably help me de-stress and be a little bit smoother in the interview process would be great. But no, I really enjoyed this interview, learned a lot. Looking forward to potentially, purchasing some of these products myself, just to see how it works for me and along with my fitness routine as well. So Morgan, thank you again for joining the I Choose Health podcast. And for the audience, this is just me reminding you that choosing health is about choosing power, possibility, and purpose. Welcome to week 44 of 52 Choices. This week we're going to take a full day off each week to rest, and don't let there be any guilt. A real day off lets your brain and body recover mentally. Detaching from work is linked to better well-being, more positive mood, and less worry and sadness. And because chronic work stress that isn't managed is tied to burnout, protecting recovery time is part of prevention. Try this. Pick one day weekly where you don't do work. No email, no planning. Treat it like a non-negotiable appointment.